counting down, or you tell me? Everybody ready? We're about to go online for the council meeting. So. All right, welcome all to the council meeting for the Rangitiki District Council for July, and a special welcome to those online viewing the meeting. Welcome along. And if we could start off the meeting by reading of the council prayer, and Councillor Wilson, if you could please read that.
Thank you, Nigel. Almighty God, as members of the Rangitiki District Council, we give thanks for all the good things of our district and the advantages we enjoy. We pray that you will give us wisdom and guidance as we conduct the affairs of this meeting. We pray for all our communities and the district we represent. Help us to be fair and honest in our discussions, and help us to work together in unity for the welfare of all your people. Amen.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Right. Apologies for this meeting. We've received apologies from, obviously, His Worship the Mayor, Andy Watson, and that is the reason why I'm sitting at the chair of this meeting today. He's away on council business. He's at a director's course, so learning heavily for the benefit of the council and the district. We also have an apology from Councillor Heroy. And Councillor Rokawa, you are leaving the meeting at 4 o'clock, so there'll be an apology for early leaving there from Councillor Rokawa. Any further apologies? There have been none. Could I have someone move that they be received? Councillor Carter, seconded. Councillor Duncan. Thank you, Councillor Duncan. I'll get this right. All right, all those in favour? Aye. Carried, thank you. I haven't been notified of any public forum, so move on to conflict of interest declarations. And I'd just like to all members to take note of item 4 on the agenda, conflict of interest. Are there any that anyone would like to declare now? Otherwise, during the time of discussions, we can. Councillor Dalgety.
As previously declared, I'm the chair of the Huntington Sport and Recreation Trust. And we come here later in the meeting.
Thank you, and we'll deal with that when we're discussing that item. Thank you. That can be noted. Right, confirmation of order of business. Now, we've been notified of one late item, and that is the submission to the Natural and Built Environments Bill. Would you like to discuss any of this? I'm happy. I've read through the reasons why it has to be put in front of this committee today, and the reasons why it is a late item, and I'm satisfied with that. Is there anything you'd like to add further to it? So what we will do is put that into 11.3 on the agenda. So after we've dealt with the 2 reports for information, we will deal with the late item of 11.3. Other than that, we will take the order paper as listed. Okay, we'll move on to confirmation of minutes of the previous meetings, and they start those pages. Yeah. Right, so starting on page 7 of the order paper, and I'll go through page by page. If there's any alterations required, please stop me at that time. So page 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, and 18. So that is for the meeting on Thursday, the 24th of June at 1 p.m. Are there any amendments required to those minutes? If not, could I have someone move that they were a true and correct record who were there? Thank you, Councillor Gordon, seconded by Councillor Carter. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you. And the second meeting for confirming the minutes is for council meeting of Thursday, the 8th of July. And that starts on page 19, 20, 21, 22, and 23 of the order paper. Are there any amendments required there? All right, there being none, could I have someone move that they're a true and correct record? Thank you, Councillor Wilson, seconded by Councillor Gordon. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Yes, it does.
Oh,
Duncan, sorry. Councillor Duncan. I'll have it right by the end of the meeting, Councillor Duncan. I should go to first name basis, shouldn't I? A lot easier. Right. Have we carried that? Right, thank you. Okay, follow-up action items from the previous meetings. That's item 7 on the agenda. And who is leading us through this?
Yeah, we're happy
Welcome.
to take the report as read and look for any questions on the updates provided.
Okay. Questions of the follow-up actions? Happy to take questions. All obviously very self-explanatory there. No questions of the any of those items on the agenda there? All right, there's a number of them there, but they're well reported in regards with what status they're at. So we'll take that report as received. So could I have someone move that the follow-up actions be received? Councillor Panapa, seconded by Councillor Rokawa. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Okay, moving on to the Mayor's report, and His Worship has put together a report, and I would be more than happy to take the report as read and ask for any comment perhaps on the report. I don't believe I'll be able to answer too much as I didn't collate the report, but quite happy to take any comment. I could start off, first of all, in regards with the comments around the local government conference, and that was attended by 3 of our councillors. And perhaps if I could ask for some comment from the councillors that are here today that did attend, just on your perspective of the conference and the benefits. Councillor Dalgety.
Firstly, thank you very much to the council for enabling us to have the opportunity to go. I feel that it is a great place to connect with other councils and find out what's happening in this instance, even outside rural and provincial. So he's starting to get a little bit of a some facial recognition and knowing some few faces, and I just think it was really good at expanding your knowledge and thinking around what's possible. I must say, I personally, this is my opinion only, I probably there was a lot of central government speakers, especially on the first day, and I was very disappointed. I was very excited. Jacinda spoke to us, and I'd never heard her speak to us live. I felt that we were very much spoken at, and there was no chance for questions. So I found that quite disappointing. But otherwise, really worthwhile few days. And I think the gala event at the end was really remarkable in terms of, well, actually the whole conference had amazing graphics. So there was this huge sense of pride for New Zealand. And but then when they hand out the awards and you realise there's 500 people here working towards a better New Zealand, working really hard towards a better New Zealand, I felt proud to be part of that group. Yeah.
All right. Thanks for that. Councillor Duncan, did you have anything?
Yes, I absolutely concur with what Councillor Dalgety just said, and also thank you to the council and for the opportunity. It was fantastic. As a new councillor particularly, it was it built on all those other workshops that we've been to, once again with rubbing shoulders. I think, as the Mayor says, that is one of the biggest benefits of going to that sort of conference. Apart from the speakers, of course, which were very good, and the motivational speakers were excellent. But as I once again, I felt that we needed more time for questions. The electronic way of questioning was tricky, in that the time was so short that there, only sort of 4 or 5 questions we ever got through to the speakers when there was an opportunity. It was very heavy-handed on the 3 waters, very much this is what we need to do. There was no real discussion apart from on a one-to-one basis, and that was particularly, I found that really valuable. I sought out our Mongowick and fielding Manawatu, and I also talked to Don, and I can't remember his name, from Ruapehu, particularly about 3 waters. Cameron, that's right. Mayor Cameron, and so interesting just having those perspectives.
Right. Yeah, it certainly is beneficial, and I think for professional development as an elected member, it's I've attended one before, certainly in my first term on council, and the networking is huge, but for your professional development and gaining a knowledge from other more experienced councillors, the benefit is huge. So well done for attending and representing our council there. So yeah, thank you on behalf of the council. Yeah. No doubt you'll be providing a report to council at some stage, so we'll look forward to seeing that from you. All right. Are there any comments, any further comments or questions of Mayor Andy's report? The only other, there's a fair bit of information there on the 3 waters, but we're discussing that on the agenda today. So we'll deal with those concerns and questions at that time. All right, well, I'll move from the chair that the Mayor's report be received. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Carter, all those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Okay, item 9 on our agenda, the Chief Executive's report. Mr. Beeks, I'll hand over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You may wish to receive it first.
I can do that. So, reception of the Chief Executive's report, moved by Councillor Carter, seconded by Councillor Wilson. All those in favour? Right. Carried. Thank you.
Thank you. There are only a small number of recommendations at the end. I'll just go through the points and ask for if there are any questions. I'll take it as read if that's okay. Health and Safety Dashboard. Any questions or comments?
Questions, Councillor Carter?
Do we cover the contractors that work for us as well, or should that be shown on these as like or whatever?
So they're included in the data. They're considered workers alongside employees, and our contractors are included in that data.
Thank you.
So that's why in there last year it included a fatality, which wasn't actually a council employee, but an employee of a contractor.
Says an inquiry from the public regarding safety issues. I'll talk to you afterwards about it if you want.
Any further questions on health and safety? Okay.
Representation review, we'll see that at our next council meeting in August. Some workshops scheduled, which I would hope that you've set aside some time if possible.
these workshops are hugely important, and especially with 3 Waters information that we'll be discussing. Please diary these in your schedules and make a point of attending them. They're absolutely necessary. There's a huge amount of work to get through, certainly throughout the latter part of this year. So we can make sure that we've all got these dates diarised. Thank you.
Next point on engagement and consultation schedule is an appendix.
So that just gives a listing of scheduled consultation or over I think it's right through to the end of the elected term. So there's quite a lot to get through, as you can see, certainly in the latter part of this year and early into next year. So it's good to have that time frame and that timeline. So we're all well aware of when that consultation will be taking place.
One of the important features I'd like for elected members to acknowledge, although it's not a resolution, is that we have appointed or nominated at least leaders that are either staff or elected members. And so they're in that document. So if there's any feedback you wish to give immediately or now or to Katrina.
So on reading that schedule, see there's a couple of names already listed there.
Yes.
But has anyone taken point of any of those any of the consultation timelines there and thought that they'd like to take that upon themselves to be a lead on the from the elected member space? There will be some obvious ones, I guess. Councillor Wilson in regards with the Marton buildings, and I would expect that your name would be.
Yeah, certainly happy to be involved in that, Chair.
Yeah. But if you want to have a good look through there, and please liaise with the Chief Executive in regards with your wish to be involved as the elected member lead on any of that consultation. Councillor Gordon.
Yeah, I've got a question through you, Chair. Peter, this table, will that be put somewhere on the website? Because if it's left embedded in this document, it'll be hard for us to find in the future. People think, what meeting was that? So it'll be good if it's in one of the other parts of the website so we can just go to it.
That's a recommendation.
Yeah.
But excellent table. It's great.
I guess one thing just to highlight there for the elected member lead is the idea is that that lead would be in contact with the staff member lead for the project. So that elected member would be someone that the lead of the project would be able to call, seek advice, bounce ideas off, and support that project at a level kind of greater than the wider group, but acknowledging that that wouldn't take anything away from the usual processes and all elected member involvement.
So would they feed back, if they're a lead of that process, would they feed back at a council meeting session or a workshop session? How's that expected?
So
the expectations, I should say.
So I guess we'll have to flesh out how that looks in practice, and I anticipate that it would look differently for different projects, depending on kind of what stage we're at with the projects as well. So my suggestion is that once we've got an elected member lead for each of the projects, that they work with the staff lead to shape up what that looks like for that specific project.
Just to add to what Katrina said, we find it beneficial when there's an elected member that's part of either a committee, for example, the advisory board for Marton Rail Hub, that when the staff member talks to this table, there's an elected member that can offer their view and take on the sort of the facts that staff give. That's very helpful. So I'd anticipate at a committee or council meeting that the elected member would participate in their views.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah, that's a clear expectation of whoever's going to be that lead contact. That we provide backup advice or support to the discussion at the time that it's raised. Thank you. Councillor Raukawa.
So in order to put your name forward as an elected member, you're just going to say Chief Executive.
Coming out, yes.
Yes, so you can, if you want to nominate.
I was looking at the changes to money wards and the constituencies, that one.
Yes, okay. That will be taken on board. Thank you. Yeah.
We don't have to have an elected member for each one.
No.
It's just for those if there's an elected member with an interest.
Yeah. Okay, I think it'll give you an opportunity to have a read through, and if you've got a particular interest or you're certainly involved in any aspect of one of these consultations, then get in touch with the Chief Executive and let them know that you're interested in being that lead role or lead contact from an elected member's perspective. Thanks, Peter.
Thank you. The Infrastructure Acceleration Fund, some of you may have heard about this via a number of channels. This gives you a bit of a background of the fund itself and confirmation that we are working particularly with one developer in regards to our submission. It is quite a lengthy process and quite time consuming, but we are in contact with one developer who wishes to work with us.
It's great. Yeah, when I saw that information, I think it's hugely beneficial, but yeah, I'm not sure if you've explained some of the process involved, and obviously some developers would be keen to take that on board, but others, depending on the size of their development, I guess, whether it's worthwhile. So that will be a feedback through to our council meeting on a regular basis.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you. Councillor Duncan.
Thank you. I have a question around this because I see that the timeline's really tight. I think it's the 18th of August that this has to, so in other words, whatever is going to be put forward actually has to be on its way already to get there by the 18th? Or is there an opportunity, for instance, we do have a relatively new housing group for the Rangatike. Is there an opportunity for them to feed into council at this stage, or would that just be really pushing the barrel too hard?
I see this as an application, a bit like the request for information for many of the applications for government funding. I didn't anticipate it being run through council. I'd certainly be happy to share, but there are multiplicity of funds that we apply for librarian support. It never come to council. But I would take your direction if that's what elected members wanted to participate in this process. But I wouldn't expect or anticipate it to come to formal council for endorsement.
Right. Yes, I see.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, I think that's the sort of thing that I'll follow on at another time.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Councillor Gordon.
Yeah, my question is around the second paragraph, and it's talking about the upgrading of infrastructure, etc. So does that mean if we were to have a big development that was going to overload our network, does this give us the money to actually run a parallel network, run 2 stormwater pipes instead of 1, or 2 sewers instead of 1? Or is it about actually doing the actual work in the development area?
Mr. Chair, if I can reply to that, really, if we can cast our minds back, where this came from was central government looking at ways to make housing more affordable. And what they found is a lot of the councils that are growing at a high rate are struggling to keep up with the capital spend to upgrade their own networks to allow that housing to happen. And what they were saying with this fund is we will help you with that investment so you can unlock more land and get more houses built quicker. So that really is the basis of it. So I think they would look at both the upgrades we need to make on our own network, so bigger pipes and the rest, and the capital expenditure on these new developments as well. So quite a lot of the bigger developments in places like Tauranga happens in phases, and you need to install large pipe for phase 1 and who carries that difference in capital expenditure. Normally, that's quite a difficult conversation, but with this fund, it's a way to overcome all those problems.
Second, if I may, does it apply to only greenfield sites or brownfield sites in the mix as well?
Yeah. Either one.
Right, thank you.
Electronic, point 6 on electronic building consents. Elected members may recall an email I'd sent a month or two ago regarding our consenting process and the high workload, exceptionally high workload in our consenting officers. And I outlined some of the initiatives being implemented. This is just an update on one, which is the electronic building consents. We are trying to fast track that. We are in a queue. Every council wants to fast track this because it's a solution that for those councils who have it, it's very successful. And we are pushing to try and accelerate as fast as we can. On that issue, if I may, Mr. Chair, we have now extended our building control officers by a number. We now have 3 full-time. At the time of my email, we had 1. We've also got a graduate. What's all those title? Okay, but he's a yeah, kind of a young person. He's not a young person coming through. Anyway, cadet. Thank you. A cadet as well to add to that. I've also worked with the regulatory manager for council to look and task them to look at ways in which low-hanging fruit, you might say, or simple tasks that they need to do, which they believe are set by our either laws, bylaws, or settings within council, and what impact that would have if they were changed on our risk. So I want to understand if we can get rid of, for example, 20% of things that we do that only add 1% to our risk, then that's a conversation that I'd like to bring to this table and see, and maybe even to audit and risk, to get your thoughts on how we might change those settings to make the processes that we have in our consenting faster.
Certainly, yeah. It's been a challenging space, hasn't it, with the growth that's been happening within our district.
Yes.
It certainly does put pressure on the team here. So any form of being able to make the process more streamlined, I think it's a worthwhile conversation to have. And the appetite, obviously, for council to perhaps take on some risk, to absorb some risk to allow for that streamlining would be certainly worthwhile having a conversation. Support that. Any comments in regards with that item? I think certainly the process is underway. From what I've heard, the Simply process is an excellent tool, and look forward to seeing it being implemented.
Thank you. Point 7, Hunterville St John. Take it as read, it's slightly curly. And if I go back in time, elected members resolved to allow St John in Hunterville to choose a particular location. We pressed them for their answer, and their answer was, we really no further forward. There's things that have to happen within St John at a national level before they move to building a facility in Hunterville. I've been brought a letter, as you've seen, an attachment that would allow us to, sorry, I'll pause there, in a long-term plan. This year, you have pledged to resolve for $50,000 to go to Hunterville St John. And I believe the spirit of that, Mr. Chair, is to support a St John's facility, an emergency ambulance facility in Hunterville. St John's aren't able to commit. The Hunterville Recreation, sorry, is it Sport and Recreation? Forgive me, I'll get the right name.
Sport and Recreation Trust.
Thank you. Yeah, Sport and Recreation Trust. I was going to get it mixed up. have made a proposal whereby they build a facility and lease that facility to St John. St John have indicated to them that's a favourable solution. We have gone to them and have received the same information, so we've validated it. And really this what I'm seeking in my recommendations that you allow me to negotiate a lease with the trust on that land, the piece of land. That piece of land is covered in the Reserves Act, so we'll need to public notify and go through that process. And then once that lease is set, then the trust can build a facility. You may wish to consider the resolution in the LTP for the $50,000, which was to go to St John, and whether you wish for that to be amended. Up to you.
Thank you. I think we'll deal with some of these requirements or recommendations that need to come out of this item, and acknowledging the conflict of interest that's been declared by Councillor Dalgety. Councillor, are you happy to stay in the room? You won't have any voting ability on this process. Are you happy to stay in the room? And are other councillors happy for Councillor Dalgety to stay in the room?
Yes, yes.
Right.
In consideration, if we can ask the elected member if there's anything that she could contribute in terms of the presentation.
Yes, yeah. Happy to actually, yeah. Councillor Dalgety, would you like to feed any further information in other than what's in this report here now, just to give some background information to elected members so they can help inform them making their decisions?
Thank you for the full report. And I guess what I would like to add has been mentioned there is a sense of urgency around this. So thank you for acknowledging possibly getting the public notification down to whatever minimum period we can do that for. And just so I'm just conscious too that around St John not wanting us to use St John until they're in situ. So you'll notice that comment in the letter. So we have to be very careful not to use St John. We locally are referring it to as an ambulance facility, not a St John ambulance facility. Yeah, I'm just wondering, Mr. Biggs, I understood the amendment was around the first resolution, not the second one. So I wondered, I don't understand the comment under that second resolution. It should also be noted that the provision of the 50,000 may not now be required.
Yes, yeah, I'll ask Mr. Biggs to respond.
The resolution asks us to provide, do you get it there, $50,000 towards ambulance facilities in Hunterville as the final funder. You're quite right, it doesn't specify the word St John, but as the final funder, what that means is that the recipient of the funding only draws on the 50,000 should they not meet their target via other means.
Sure, yeah.
So perhaps I have confused the absence of the word St John.
Okay. Because I felt the urgency was around changing, taking St John out of that first resolution.
Well, remember, these are only suggested recommendations, so they're not a resolution, okay. They're not a recommendation here at the moment, other than what has been specified around, that's listed in this report here. So I think we're probably starting to get into some debating type issue. If you're happy, I mean, a fair bit of information's been provided in this report. So I think what we'll do is go around the table and just ask for any questions of the information in the report, and then we'll look at getting a resolution put down on the floor and have discussion around that. So first of all, questions of this section of the Chief Executive's report. Councillor Carter.
What is the relationship between St John's or ambulance facility to the one with VHP? Are they interested in it? Or are they still going to continue with an ambulance facility in Hunterville? So I believe they're cutting back.
Yeah, I'm not sure whether that question can be answered here. I don't know that Councillor Dalgetty has any information that could be.
My concern is we're putting into a facility that may not run.
Well, the lease is for 20 years, so.
I think you'll find that that letter actually states the confirmation of St John's if this build with the Sport and Recreation Trust in Hunterville goes ahead, that they will commit to the 20-year period. So from the letter that I've read,
Yeah, St John's are not DHB.
St John's are the ambulance provider.
DHB run.
No, I don't think so.
St John's.
Well, that's in
Right, further questions?
Just if I could perhaps just speak to what Councillor Carter was saying, if you look at the letter there, it does say that it would be authorisation would be signed upon as the Auckland District Law Society standard lease and terms. I would be fairly certain that the trust would not be entering into a build without that lease term being set and signed with its renewal periods throughout, and that is to St John's.
Thank you. Any further questions? Otherwise, we need to look at perhaps getting a recommendation on so we can start debating that recommendation on the table. Councillor Gordon.
Given the discussion we've just had, the recommendations there that are on page 36, how much amending do they need? We just need St John removed out of all those sentences, an ambulance facility or something similar put in. Is that the thrust of where we're heading?
I would think we would certainly need to remove St John's out of that recommendation and have it so that it states that it's for the provision of ambulance services. And also there's a requirement under the public notification for council to move intention to grant a lease. So I don't know that we could, as that recommendation reads, it says that council authorises a lease. Yeah, I'm not sure whether the wording would be quite correct. Council could show its intention to grant a lease, but then it has to go through that notification process. Councillor Wilson.
Through you, Chair, just in the effort to move this one along, looking at the recommendation A there, if it was simply to remove the word St John, so that the site is utilised for ambulance, utilised for activities providing on-call ambulance services, I think that would be suffice. And if that was those two, if St John was removed from that, I'd be happy to move recommendation A.
And the word authorises, or would it intention to
Utilise for
intention to
activities.
grant a lease?
Yes, yes.
Because the authorisation will come after the notification.
Yeah,
period.
after that, yeah, intention to grant a lease for public notification, yep.
Do staff see any issue with that wording if that was changed?
What do you want to change? I don't mind the St John bit going, that's cool.
Council
no
signals
requirement.
its intention to grant a lease.
Yeah.
And then obviously it goes through that notification process for it to be formally granted after the notification process.
Yeah, I'll perhaps you can say instead of end noting the requirement, that's subject
Yeah, subject to.
public notification.
I'm not a legal mind, so what I'm saying is that, yeah, will those words cause any concern about the process? I mean, in principle, we understand what's been.
I'm happy again to move that as it is worded up there.
Councillor Wilson will move that as written, seconded by Councillor Rolkawa.
You can't change.
So this is section A.
You just say.
Just A. Yeah.
So there was a question, Mr. Chair, about whether we can change the title of the recommendation, but you can't because it's part of the.
No, but the recommendation will come out without the St. John acknowledgement within it. Right, so any discussion? Would anyone like, sorry, I'll give you first since you moved the motion.
No, I think that clarifies the situation.
If there's no discussion, I'll put it straight to the vote. All those in favour?
Right.
Against? Right, carried, thank you. Now, recommendation 2 that's suggested there, consents to sublease. I don't believe we actually need to have any reference to that, because that piece of land will be leased to the Sport and Recreation Trust. Then it is up to the trust if they build a building on it and sublease or lease the building to an ambulance provider. That's the trust's responsibility. I don't believe that council needs to be involved.
I think we would need to be involved. I'm not sure if that's a requirement of the Act, I don't know. But if we leased it to the Sport and Recreation Trust and they decided to lease it to another party with intent other than council's wish.
Right. Okay. Councillor Gordon.
The thought I had would want to have a look at the legal status of that land. Is it been set aside as a recreation reserve or something? And are there fish hooks in that designation?
So we've checked that, and we know that we can follow this process subject to public notification.
Cool.
My advice might be, Mr. Chair's consents to a sublease to an appropriate ambulance provider.
All right. So we understand the intention of that, and if that removes the St. John's, so that council consents to a sublease to an appropriate ambulance provider. Is that what the word was? So,
Mr. Chair, could I just, if I may, because I think it's important that we do get this right. I think that B should say, subject to the outcome of public notification.
Or subject to
at the start of that,
Anyway,
yeah, at the start of it, subject to point A. Comma consents to a sublease.
Yeah, thank you.
mhm.
Are you happy with that wording, Councillor Wilson?
Yes, I am.
Would you be happy to move that?
And I'm happy to move that.
Right, moved Councillor Wilson, seconded by Councillor Carter. Would you like to speak to that, or I'll put it straight to the vote?
No, I'm happy with that as it's
Should it
worded.
be, just I'm just being pedantic, should it be recommendation A and not point A? I mean,
Recommendation 2.A. Right, yep. Thank you. You happy with that?
Yes.
Alteration, right.
Right, Chair.
Okay. No further discussion on that. I will put it to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. And we have a suggested recommendation around the Scout Hall. Well, actually, it was a recommendation that was moved as in the report. Where are we? Yeah, the recommendation was 19/RDC/223 and the report on page 34.
Could I
Discussion on that, Councillor.
Yeah, sorry, sorry, Chair, just on this one, I do have a little concern about this, and I would certainly seek the CE's advice. I'm just a little bit concerned that there's no cost factor associated with this and how much work has been done as to what's actually involved in the removal of this building. You know, are we, you know, I know the building, I've driven past it, and you know, one could say that it's not of any significant structure, but what is actually involved? You know, are we talking asbestos here? You know, and what sort of costs are we actually potentially looking for? Because if we look at the wording in that recommendation, and I note that it was carried back in 2019, I'm just a little nervous that there's not a little bit of clarity as to what the costs may actually be to be met by council. And I'm just a little not very comfortable with this one. But I don't know what that means for the previous recommendation back in 2019. So as it sits there,
it is a recommendation that has been made. And that is our challenge, I guess, in rescinding a recommendation when this is going to progress. And I don't know that we can go back and debate a recommendation that's already been progressed. Councillor Gordon.
Just to help the discussion, could either of the Huntable members give us some sort of clarity over whether this building is going to be just demolished or put on a back of a truck and carted off to be used for some other mechanism?
Point A.
Oh, no. Okay.
Just asking perhaps Councillor Lambert, do you know you're online there on Zoom?
Yeah, no, I do. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. No, I don't know what the intention with the building. I can tell you it was moved on site. It was a hall or a school building in a small area outside Huntable. So it was moved on site many years ago to become the Scout Hall. But what the intention of they're planning to do with it, I have no idea.
Councillor Alcoa.
Sorry, through you, Mr. Chair, I'm not aware of the recommendation back in 2019. Was there a cost associated with it? Was there a price? So it was just.
doesn't appear to be.
No. Page 34, the recommendation basically states the final wording and the clearance of the site at least cost to council. So no, there wasn't any specific cost put to the value of removing and clearing the site.
Do we have would it be something that we would find out? Even though that you've approved for it at the least costs, can we have a understanding of what it might cost to remove this wall? No?
I think, yeah, we're discussing a recommendation that's not sitting there on the table. It's already been confirmed by council. It would be a challenge to change that recommendation as to what's been listed.
Could I raise another point, if I may? I take it from reading the report and comments made by our chief executive, he appears to be, or council appears to be seeking some clarification around the $50,000 as well.
Yes.
So there is another recommendation that is likely to come before this committee. Could we consider that prior to this recommendation? Or whatever that may be.
I'll ask for comment from the chief executive.
So two parts to that, Mr. Chair. Firstly, the issue of the $50,000 doesn't come with a recommendation from staff. We would encourage your debate and for us to implement your recommendation. On the issue of point C, I would be comfortable for each members to advise us to remove that recommendation and ask me to undertake a review of how much it's going to cost to remove the Scout Hall, and then if I can do that by next council meeting, and that may inform elected members whether they wish to rescind the 2019 motion resolution, or what they may wish to do with $50,000.
Thank you. Councillor Wilson.
In the essence of speed of delivery of this and getting all parties on board, could I suggest a recommendation that may encompass all of those factors? And my recommendation would be that the council reconfirms a $50,000 pledge or whatever it may be in year one of the LTP to providing ambulance services in Hunterville, and that the cost of removing the Scout Hall should be included within that.
Something along those lines, if we could get the wording correctly.
That way it deals with both issues, that the cost falls on council.
So basically what we're saying is the cost, whatever the cost is to remove and clear the site, would actually come from the $50,000 that's been signalled in the LTP.
That's been signalled in the LTP, and it's my understanding from the LTP process that it was well supported within, but then I'm speaking to a motion that I haven't got a seconder for, but I'm moving that at this point.
We'll get the wording correct and then ask for a seconder. I think that's probably the. So you have to just have a look at that. Mr. Biggs, and see if that's workable.
Yeah.
Right. Right, thank you. Are you happy with that wording, Councillor Wilson? The intention is what you've described, so I think we just need. Okay, Councillor Lambert, you can't see that recommendation is written there. I'll read that out. So that council reconfirms providing $50,000 in year one of the LTP for providing ambulance services in Hunterville, and that the removal costs for the Scout Hall should come from the sum. I'll ask for a seconder first. I'll ask for a seconder first, and then we'll take. Are you wanting to?
I'll second it. But
Oh, sorry, I had a seconder signalling down the end of the room. So, Councillor Carter, seconding. Right, I'll start off. Sorry,
I'm so sorry. Just referring to the old resolution, I wonder if this one, forgive me, is removal cost of the Scout Hall and clearance of the site.
As per resolution.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, then it does clarify back to that resolution.
Yeah, and clearance of the site.
As per resolution
19/RDC/223.
No, that's fine. That keeps things clarified. Right, seconded by Councillor Carter. Now, questions, or are you speaking? Are you wanting to speak to or against the motion?
just a question, please.
Good questions.
Thanks
Councillor Ash.
thanks for the clarity first, and that is needed. But also wondering if the word "should" is a little too ambiguous. If we can just change it to "will come from this sum."
Yeah.
Questions, and then I'll actually go to speaking for the motion. Are you speaking?
I have a question.
Question? Yes, Councillor Duncan.
I have a concern around this because I don't know what the legal implications are or what it actually says in the long-term plan. But if we've committed to being the final funder, how does that work with changing it now to being, because this is pre any build, isn't it? Final funder for the build, I assume that's what we were committed to. And now this is actually pre any build and nothing actually not to do with the build. It's actually to do with the clearing, so it's a completely different thing. Does that have a, problem.
When you read the state or the resolution, the council contributes 50,000 year one of the LTP towards ambulance facilities in Hunterville as the final funder. The interpretation is that this is going towards providing ambulance services.
Thank you. If that's
The
covers it over,
interpretation
that's
is
fine.
that it is.
Mhm.
Okay,
Thank you.
we'll start off with speaking to the resolution, and Councillor Wilson, you moved it, so.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Look, what I'm really trying to do here is speed this process along for the Hunterville Community Trust, the Sports Trust, for the people of Hunterville. There's a need. We've got a letter of intent, which is very clear from a party that it will be future renting or leasing these premises. I would go as far as to say that the term of the final funder is not in that resolution that I've put up there, and I would be seeing it as by way of a firm contribution from council to these facilities. And I wouldn't see any need for that to be listed as a final funding situation, because we have clearly indicated a $50,000 contribution to a facility which is needed in Hunterville. And if the terminology as a final funder was not or was to be removed, I would see that it would still precise what we're trying to do. That's my take on it.
Thank you. Any further speakers? No? Okay. I think we've all got the idea and want to see this progress within our Hunterville community. And I think this goes a long way in seeing this develop. And I've got to say thank you to Councillor Dalgetty and the team for their team for progressing this for the benefit of Hunterville community. So if there's no further speakers, what I'll do is put this to the vote. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you. Now, yeah, yes. So there needs to be a further recommendation provided, and that is around the delegation as listed in the report to the Chair of Assets and Finance and to the Chief Executive to progress the any submissions to the public notification and also to progress the lease agreement. So we'll just get some wording put up there. Sorry, the microphones haven't gone mute. We're just getting some wording for the recommendation for those online. Okay, so the recommendation would read that the Chair of Assets Infrastructure Committee and the CE are delegated the hearing of submissions or objections to the public notification of the intention to grant a lease for ambulance facilities in Hunterville and to progress the lease agreement. Will be and.
Agreements.
Okay. I'm happy to move that from the chair. And I'll read that out for those online and also Councillor Lambert, that the chair of the Assets Infrastructure Committee and Chief Executive are delegated the hearing of submissions or objections to the public notification of the intention to grant a lease for ambulance facilities in Huntable and to make decisions on the proposed lease and sublease agreements. So I'll move that from the chair, seconded by Councillor Duncan. I don't believe we need any discussion on this. I'm happy to, if there's no discussion, I'm happy to put it straight to the vote. Right, all those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? Carried. Right. Thank you. I think that deals with all of the items under the, it doesn't.
Oh, under Huntable.
Under Huntable,
Yes,
yes,
it
yes,
does,
yes.
Yes.
Moving right along.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
I'm encouraged by the level of conversation for Chief Executive's report. Items 8 and 9 are both follow-ups from previous discussions of both members. Firstly, Taipi Scenic Reserve. There was a question regarding Department of Conservation. We've now resolved that, as you see on page 35, and so take your recommendation as read on page 36.
Okay, so recommendation.
This is the electronic
Yes.
payment donation system.
Okay, so there's a suggested recommendation there in regards with the advice that's come from the Department of Conservation. And are there any questions first in regards with this? Okay, start with Councillor Dalgetty and then Councillor Carter.
So I'm just wondering if council has looked at any of these electronic payment systems. I mean, obviously there's a variety out there. I'm just wanting to comment that at conference, you know, everyone's there trying to sell their wares, and there was a Kiwi Cash one that looked really good to suit those purposes.
Yeah, okay. So you're asking, has council looked at any other alternatives?
No, at the actual electronic system, like how you're going to make that donation system work.
My understanding of the previous report was that the Taipi, the Friends of Taipi have looked in depth at this. And it was in the previous report that there's a provider of that service that is trialling it with the Friends of Taipi.
Already, got it, thank you. Yeah.
That was my understanding from the previous report. Okay. Questions, Councillor Carter?
Yeah, my question was in regards to that as well, as to whether there's a signal there so they can do the transactions.
Yeah, okay. Chief Executive will provide.
This is a request made to council by the Friends of Taipi Society, and coming to you is for seek your authorisation that they can implement their solution. We've had no say, comment, etc. into the solution. So we would presume that they've got a solution that's fit for purpose.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson.
Happy to move recommendation 3.
Oh, sorry. Did you have another question? Sorry, Councillor Gordon.
No. Councillor Duncan and I were about to leap in and
Well,
As a
so I have your residence, I'd be quite happy to accept Councillor Gordon. Councillor Gordon, were you looking at?
happy to move.
Right, you're happy to move that recommendation. I'm sure Councillor Duncan would be quite happy to second that. Is that correct? Sorry, Councillor Wilson, to cut you out of the realm there. Okay, Councillor Gordon, did you have anything to provide?
Oh, look, very happy that this confirmation came through from the Department of Conservation. And just in a very broad sense, I think it's good that we can actually generate income streams that aren't part of the rate not necessarily from the ratepayer, because we need to spend an awful lot of money in all of our reserves, and there's never enough money, and there's too few pockets to take the money out of. So very happy to see this and happy to move. Yeah.
Thank you. Any further discussion or speakers to the motion? Against the motion? Right, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you.
And my final is another follow-up. You may recall Council resolved to return the name of the Marton RSA and Citizens Memorial Hall. And there was a question on signage and how much it was going to cost. And that issue was left on the table. And so the recommendation is now giving a cost to that activity.
Thank you. Any questions around this section of the report? Councillor Wilson.
As I who requested lie on the table, I'm happy to move recommendation 4 as it's worded.
Okay. Thank you. And we'll have a seconder, Councillor Ralkawa. I don't think it needs any further discussion. We've already discussed this at a previous meeting, so I'll put it straight to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Right. Thank you very much. End of your report.
Yes, it is.
Okay. Right. Moving right along. Up to reports for decision, and we have the Three Waters reform update, and Mr. Benedi has taken us through this report. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the opportunity. The report we've put together really does two things today. So it's firstly an update from the previous information that we've shared with council to kind of bring you up to speed of what's happened over the last 2 months or so. And secondly, it kind of allows discussion about the way forward for us as a council and as a community. So that's kind of what we had in mind with the report. It started in November last year with a request for information from central government. We supplied them with a large amount of data around the Three Waters business and assets and what we own. They've taken that data and they've produced a series of reports from that. The reports came out about a month ago. 4 of them very information dense, 600 pages altogether. So it's quite a lot of information included in there. And if you look on page 2 at the top, there's a bit of a summary really of what's come out of those reports. So what that says in short is between 120 and 185 billion dollars would need to be invested over the next 30 years to meet water standards. New Zealand could achieve similar efficiencies over the next 30 years to Scotland, which is about a 45% saving on operations. Cost to consumers under amalgamated entities are calculated to be less than they will be if the status quo is retained. Reform would boost the economy, adding 14.4 to 23 billion dollars to GDP over 30 years. An additional 5,800 to 9,300 jobs will be created, and employment in the water sector will be 80% larger in 30 years than what it is now. So that's a short summary of the most important things that came out of those reports. What they've then done, they've taken all of that information that they've collected from all the requests for information of local authorities, and they've put that together in a localized dashboard, if you like. So there's a site that you can visit. You can click on the council that you're from, and it will then produce the dashboard that is applicable to your council. So I've added our dashboard as part of the report, so you can have a look at it. It's really divided up into 5 different information blocks. In our case, we only get feedback on 4 of them. And the reason for that is in the beginning, they asked a select number of councils to give them a more detailed request for information, and we were not one of those councils. So we gave kind of the baseline information, where some of them gave a much more detailed picture. And if you did supply information on the detailed picture, you would also have a performance block. So you can see our performance block is grayed out. There's nothing in there. So the information displayed in the services and operation boxes are really just a graphical representation of the information that we supplied to them. So it's just an easy way to kind of look at the operations and the services that we supply. The one I think we would have a lot of interest in is the financial information contained in the dashboard. So that is the big box in the middle that says financials. And what happened here is the Water Industry Commission of Scotland, so the WICS for short, modeled and calculated the revenue required to fund future investment into average cost per household. So they were looking in 30 years' time, how much money would we need in a year and how many people will be connected to the network in 30 years' time. And that would be your average cost per household. And I've summarized in the little table at the bottom what that looks like for us, for RDC. And you can see that the revenue required annually goes up from 8.4 million, where we are today, up to 217 million in 30 years' time. The number of properties also increases, and that means the annual household cost calculated increases as well. And an interesting thing to note, although 2051, the answer is 9,525, DIA, the Department of Internal Affairs, decided to cap that number at 8,690. And they said the reason for that is they accept there are lots of variables and unknowns, and they were happy to cap it at that number. There was also announcements from central government regarding the entities that might be proposed, and they agreed on 4 water providers. RDC has been included in Entity B, which is a collection of 22 councils stretching from the Taranaki to the Coromandel through the centre of New Zealand. So 22 of them altogether. And on the next page, you can see a picture of those proposed entities and where we sit in those. So quite interestingly enough, although being included in Entity B, central government invited feedback from 6 councils in the Wanganui and Taranaki regions who had formerly been indicated to be placed in Entity C to get some feedback from all those councils. There was a meeting of chief executives of all 6 of those councils earlier in July 15 at the conference. And it was agreed that they would organise a hui for those chief executives and all the iwi that's affected in those 6 regions to come up with an agreed position, and then that will be written down in a letter to central government, and that will become the final position of those 6 entities or the 6 councils. Also announced was a $2.5 billion package to councils as part of the Three Waters reform. And this package aims to make sure no council is worse off and every community is better off after reform. And it really covers 3 different parts. Support for local government to invest in communities' well-being. This covers $2 billion right now and a further $500 million that will be available from the 1st of July. And this will be allocated between different councils using a set formula. So the amount that will be coming to Rangitikei District Council is $13.317 million. It is for targeted support to ensure no councils are financially worse off as a result of the transferring of the 3 water assets. And thirdly, cover of reasonable transition costs. The 3 really important issues that needs to be worked through over the next couple of weeks is at the bottom of that page. It's ensuring that all communities have both a voice in the system and influence over the local decisions. So to be sure that we all have input into that. Effective representation of the new water entities oversight boards so that there is strong accountability to the communities they serve, and making sure councils plan for growth are appropriately interrogated with water services planning. Now, if we look at our own long-term plan, we have a total of $51 million agreed and approved in that long-term plan for the 3 water services over the next 10 years. And this capital spend will ensure compliance for us, for our 3 waters. That's why we've planned the work and why we've agreed to that spend. It's important to note, though, at this point that there has been a new regulator formed as well, Taumata Arawai, and what they're going to do is administer and enforce the new drinking water standards. So at this point, our LTP looks at the existing standards and how we would get to comply with existing standards. We are not quite sure at this stage what the new standards would look like and how that would affect us or the current long-term plan. Then we've got the conclusions portion at the bottom end. I think the important bits I want to just run by you there is a communications campaign is being led and delivered by central government to supply the public with basic information regarding the reasons for change and the expected benefits delivered by the new water entities. There is opportunity for RDC to manage local district-wide consultation with our communities and iwi to supply the information and answers to local questions and concerns. I think that's just an important point. The proposed next steps could potentially be to organise a council workshop dedicated to discussing the 3 waters reform and to consider a suitable consultation program and timelines for the district. And then finally, there's a note that during the next 8 weeks, every council has a chance to take a closer look at the reform proposals and assess the impact on them and their community. And just on that point, I just wanted to mention that we have engaged the services of advisors to come and have a look at our situation. And the idea behind this is to help us form a clearer picture of our own circumstances and what the pros and cons will be for us as a council to either opt in or to opt out. So we're meeting with them on Monday, and they will produce an impact matrix to help us look at those pros and cons. They make use of a balanced scorecard approach to examine all of the relevant issues. So that's services and environment, people and supply chain, social and economic well-being, as well as finances and funding. And this tool then that they will produce for us is really meant or intended to help mayors and councillors form a better picture and a better understanding of their individual positions. And this work, good for us, will be funded by DIA, so we're not paying for that. And also we've moved on it really quickly, which also puts us in a good position. Once it's become available, the whole country wants one of those. And luckily for us, ours are on Monday. We're meeting with them on Monday. So I would imagine once we have that picture and we then have a workshop afterwards, we would have much more to present to you. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Arno. Just moving receipt, Chair. Okay, thank you. We'll move that first recommendation. Councillor Wilson, receipt of 3 waters reform update, seconded by Councillor Gordon. All those in favour?
No.
Carried, thank you. So, questions or comments? Councillor Wilson.
Too numerous to probably outlay at this table, apart from the fact that there are a huge number of questions. What ifs, what could be, what might be, what does it look like? So I'm also certainly endorsing recommendation 2 that we have an elected members workshop with council, community board chairs and iwis, because there are a number of questions that we need to thrash out to see where this all ends up, but there's too much to probably solve around this table today.
And there's still a lot of information coming in too that needs to be digested. So it's a moving beast, literally as we speak. I know His Worship the Mayor gave me a lot of questions to put forward to this discussion, but I think there'll certainly be questions that will go to the workshop session. And we'll garner more information. One of my questions was around how was the modelling done for 2051. I mean, that's a hugely scary number, and it's pleasing to hear that we've engaged a consultant to actually give us our true position, so that we can give a clear, balanced argument against the 2 options. Councillor Dalgety.
I'm not speaking the recommendation.
Oh, sorry. Or just Have you moved?
Yeah.
We'll just take questions first on the report, or any comments, and then we'll deal with the recommendation. Councillor Gordon, you had a question?
Yeah, it's really question for Arno and the chief exec probably. I mean, if we sit back and look at the whole space, it's really about how many dollars you put in and when and where you put them in and who does it, you know, competency. And I see nothing in government's spin that really says where's the extra dollars going to come from, and how do we get a better deal? I mean, look, if we look at the health space, we have a national buying agency called Pharmac, and they buy drugs from overseas and they beat those drug companies up, and they're not liked, but we get a better deal. I see nothing like that for pipes, you know, and we import some pretty expensive bits of kit and lots of it, and we're going to need to spend monumental amounts of money, and I see nothing like that. This is just almost like changing the deck chairs on the Titanic kind of stuff in some ways. Yeah, that's just my opinion.
I'll ask the chief executive to perhaps respond to some of those questions or comments.
The two questions that you'd asked, the first one was, where do the dollars come from? So one of the challenges that led to the water reform, or at least proposal to water reform, is that there is acknowledged to be a infrastructure deficit for what assets are currently held by councils nationally and what is required by councils or nationally to support improved drinking water outcomes and environmental outcomes for wastewater. And councils are bound to our balance sheet and how much we can borrow. And by amalgamating into an entity, so those assets sit on an entity that is separated from the balance sheet of both government and the council, it allows the debt to be formed outside of the bounds that we would normally have as a council. So in order to fund it, they separate us from the balance sheet and they debt fund it. So your first question is, how do they fund it? It's debt, but that's the reason why. Your second question around, or what I heard your questions, forgive me if haven't got it quite right, is you're right, there will be a tidal wave of infrastructure investment, and that will need to be managed once the reforms happened. It will need to be managed by the water service entities through procurement and all that kind of stuff. It's not entirely different to what we currently face. I forget the numbers. In fact, I may even have them here, but the total amount spent by councils in the last financial year prior to the LTP was X billion. The LTP commitments for this financial year have gone up by about 40%. So councils are also acknowledging that there are deficits in this area. And that's shown prior to reform by councils saying, gosh, we do need to spend more money in these assets. And you've seen that nationally in headlines where pipes are bursting, assets are failing. And the worst case, of course, what happened in Headlock North, where there are deaths. We tend to focus a lot on drinking water. Let's not forget a lot of the wastewater treatment plants in New Zealand are operating on expired consents. And when some councils go to the public and consult, the answer is, if we don't need to, why spend the money? And that has a perverse environmental outcome that the government wishes to address. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
Thanks, Peter. Councillor Duncan, you had a question.
Yes, there's several things. As Councillor Wilson says, that there's huge, this brings up so many questions. But firstly, I'd like to say how impressed I am that our council is in a position, due to a lot of hard work by staff, to be first, to get off the rank and get this this impact matrix tool sorted. That's really encouraging, and I think that I really look forward to seeing the outcomes for that going into the workshop. Thank you. And I guess until that happens, there probably aren't, I can't perhaps get my my questions answered, so I'll wait till then. But yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, Councillor Delgatti did send some questions that we are prepared to answer. If
Okay,
that
I'll
helps.
be happy to for you to run through those now. Yeah. Well, Councillor Delgatti, would you perhaps ask them now and then?
Thank you very much.
and-
Look, I'm very happy for them to go to the workshop. Yeah, where everyone can fully discuss all manner of questions.
I think, yeah. His Worship, the Mayor's given me a list of questions which I guess will be answered as further information comes out. You know, the biggest challenge is how do we keep our voice, you know, in a big entity. That's going to be one of our biggest challenges, and we need to have some real reassurance around that before any decision could be made. And we've sat in the space of changing legislation. You know, that's really what's impacted this council on the spend on infrastructure, trying to meet legislation for wastewater standards, the output standards, and that's not going to change in the future. So we really need to take a good hard look at the impact on our communities and our district. And a workshop situation, I think, will flesh out a lot of the concerns and hopefully provide us with some answers. Councillor Duncan?
Yes, just sorry, just one more thing. From the Blenheim conference, one of the things that came out of it at the end was everyone said that there's 8 weeks. Basically, we have 8 weeks basically to get this together, and the consensus from the people I spoke to was that we should start our consultation with our communities as soon as possible, not wait until. So I also would like to support that suggestion.
Yes, certainly the sooner we do, the better, but we need to consult with accurate information.
Yes.
I think that's what the workshop will bring about, is collating the information that we can go out and consult with. There's no point in going out there with information that, you know, we don't have at our fingertips as yet. So get that process underway, get that information, clear and accurate information, and then get out into the community and consult. Councillor Ash, a question?
Yeah, the consultation, I think, is obviously hugely important, but wondering how much actual knowledge is within the community that we're going through this. I was at a Zoom meeting last night with people throughout the country who were completely unaware that this is what the country's going through. So just, you know, they're just regular people, but nobody in the room, in the Zoom room, knew that this is what we're going through as a country. So if we could get maybe some information out, just keep stuff going out so people are aware that this.
I know it's certainly been pushed through our website that the reform process is underway, and there's certainly advertising coming from central government out there on the television and radio and what have you. But yeah, the consultation process or period needs to be long enough to actually make any real benefit out of it. So yeah, that's the important one. Councillor Gordon, before we wrap up.
Another question, I guess, for the Chief Exec. Is central government hung up on the how of this process, or is there ultimate, or are they really wanting to get to the goal at the end? Because, you know, they're being fairly prescriptive in their potential mechanisms, but is that to actually get local government to engage and actually come up with a better idea, plan B and plan C, etc.? Or are they really got their hearts set on the mechanisms that they've put up, and basically this process of consultation is little more than a Clayton's consultation? Because I mean, there could be some other ways of doing it. That there could be some positive stuff that will come out. So I'm just wondering,
So, yeah, so the government have signalled this direction for a long time, last term. And their investigation looked at two other areas, Tasmania and Scotland, as potential methods of reform in the space and what the benefits, etc., outcomes were. And they've chosen to align with the Scottish model. What's still open, and if I may kind of digress my answer a little, is the question on the opt-in, opt-out. Now, when I first brought this to your attention 18 months ago, I talked to you that the government had signalled this is an opt-out, and if you wish to join, it's opt-in. And at that time, Arno and I were working in a regional sense with Palmerston North and Whanganui and all the councils in a region to see what a regional solution might look like. Fast forward to 9 months from there, and the narrative was you're opting in, but you have the option to opt out if your members choose not, you don't want to be. And I would certainly invite the councillors who are at LG&Z. My summary, and this is not the way it's been written down, but my summary of the oral presentations was, and that's from the Prime Minister and Minister Mahuta and Minister Robertson, is that the opt-in, opt-out conversation is no longer a discussion thread. I would summarise it by saying we'll negotiate until you're in, because they believe, central government believe, that the evidence is so compelling in terms of how we achieve the deficit in the infrastructure to achieve the environmental and social outcomes that the reform is seeking to achieve. And they can see it so compelling that we just need to work with every council until everyone's in.
Yeah.
Now, that kind of answers your question, I think, because does that mean we would change the way in which we're done? Well, we're an entity B with us and 21 other councils that we'd need to consider. But I think the research that has been done, some observers and feedback from LG&Z conference was around, well, Scotland is very different in terms of its topography and layout. It also doesn't have Indigenous community that plays a significant role in Te Mana o Te Wai in terms of how our law is written around water now.
Right. Thank you. Right, we'll circle this discussion back around to.
Can I have one more thing?
One last point, and then
Chief Executive, take that
I'm trying to keep to my schedule here.
Yeah, I just
to be carry on.
It was just a number of conversations I've had with elected ministers around rural water.
Yeah.
We will, Arno and I will clarify that. Our understanding that the rural water supplies, the three rural water schemes are stock water irrigation schemes or stock water schemes. And as a result, do not fit within the legislative framework of the Water Services Act or Water Services Bill, which will be acted at the end of the year.
That's positive.
Yeah, that's our working assumption. There's been very little conversation on it. The Act, Taumata Arawai do consider rural water supplies, be they borehead or rooftop or whatever, and they have solutions on how they expect those water sources to be safely drinkable or treated. But we consider a rural water scheme, and the intent of it is a stock water irrigation scheme, and therefore it's not human consumption, doesn't apply.
Thank you for that clarification. Okay, getting back around to the recommendation that sits within the order paper. I did have someone prepared to move that. Councillor Dalgety, you were prepared to move recommendation 2, that the council agreed to staff hosting a 3 waters reform workshop with elected members, iwi and community board chairs. Do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Duncan, seconded. All those in favour?
No.
Against? Carried. Right. Thank you all. Moving along now to our project management office report. And Mr. Benedee is going to take us through this. Thank you, Anna.
So thank you, Mr. Chair. Just apologies from Jess. She's not feeling well today, so she's gone home, and I'm afraid she's left you with the B team. So, so I think I'll just step through them quickly, and if you've got any questions on any of the specific projects, I'll do my best to answer those. So the first one up is the Mongowick Bridge replacement. In general terms, progressing well as planned and no unforeseen hiccups. The second one, Marketable's Wastewater Centralization project. Positive news is we will be going out as a full tender very shortly. It's either the end of this week or end of next week. So we have finalized the details that were outstanding. If you can remember, we already asked for expression of interest earlier, so let us know what's coming. And now we've got the last detail, will go out the door very soon.
There's a question on that.
Yeah.
Arno, so the time frame that's been scheduled around construction and to receive that funding, so to be constructed before the end of March 22, is that still on track?
Yep, absolutely.
Right.
And what we've done actually is we've bundled all of them. So we have 3 funded projects. We've bundled them all together in an attempt to attract the larger contractors, and that's worked out really well.
Okay. Yes. Thank you. Any questions of? No. Move along.
Thank you. The third one is the Lake Waipu improvements. And really the feedback that's important would be, we have 2 farmers that might be interested in a deal with us for land, either lease or purchase or a mixture of the 2. We've had negotiations with them towards the end of last week. And so far, all indications are fairly positive. And we hopefully will be able to come back to you quite soon with progress.
What are we reporting tomorrow? What are we reporting today?
We were hoping we'd be a bit further progressed. We had some discussions with legal advisors on their side, so that was quite positive. But we're still not at a point where we can say this is what's going to happen. So it's still negotiating. But I think the important thing to report tomorrow to the governance group is progress with the 2 farmers, and still quite a positive attitude from them. So it's pretty good.
So here's the question, sorry, has the land been identified as being suitable?
It's interesting. Both the farmers do not want a third party to come and have a look at all their farms. What we've agreed with them is once we've agreed on the land that they are prepared to negotiate around, we will look at only that land. Okay. And because we haven't agreed on that, we haven't done that. Although we have lined up consultants to do that for us. So the moment we've identified the land, they'll be on that.
Thank you. Sorry, Councillor Rolkawa.
So just a question to you, Arno. If you purchase the land and the land's not suitable?
No. So once we've identified the land, sorry, 3 years ago. Once we've identified the land, the next step is to check if the land's suitable. If the land's suitable, purchase. So from a soil condition perspective, we've already done that check. It's all good. This is from an endangered habitat perspective. So we don't want anything to trip us up that we can't use that land.
And the farmers or whoever owns these lands have said no, they don't want to. Just to say they didn't want.
Yeah, so let me just explain where that came from. So if you can remember, we identified a piece of land right on the coast. Horizons came along, did their investigations, and then classified the whole farm as rare habitat, which now means that person that owns the land can do nothing with it.
Yeah.
For commercial farmers, that's a very sensitive issue, because if somebody comes along and says, now your whole farm, you can't do X, Y, and Z on that, that's a real problem. So to limit that risk to the farmers, we will identify the land that they prepare to negotiate with us, and then only check that piece of land.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? No.
Right, next one on the list is Tamata Pihi. it really is two things. The first is the bus lane and the town square starts October this year, and the second is the finalization of the CCC Code of Compliance certificate. So that's been completed, and we will receive the CCC, I think, by the end of July or early August. The next one on the list, Tai Happy Memorial Park.
So I just on that one, just a reminder to elected members that the resolution regarding the changing rooms examination is considered a separate project. And that's why it doesn't appear here.
This is Tomato PE.
Yes.
Yes.
Good point. Right, so for the Tai Happy, we've got two items there again. It's the amenities building and the grandstand. The amenities building, the most important, so we've got the detailed design continuing in the background. The big thing for us coming up is the tree planting day on the 7th of August. We'll have a nice presentation there of the building, what it looks like, so we can expose that to as many people as possible. And then the naming of the building is the other journey that we're starting. And we're going to look at what the process is around that. The grandstand, we have completed the reports that was asked for, and we will bring that to the August committee, council committee. Any questions on that one?
Just clarification around the Giblin group. I understand they've changed their sort of modus operandi or whatever. So did we speak to them early enough so they can still do the application for us, or can you just outline that relationship, please?
Oh, great.
So the Giblin group did do some work for us and have prepared the documentation, and they're still happy to help us with anything in relation to that.
Answer your question.
Thank you.
Councillor Dalgety. Right. Thank you.
Thank you. The next project is the remediation of the historic landfill on Puturina Road. Complete excavation is the 30th of July. So that's end of the week. It's gone extremely well. I must say, a really good contractor and a really good outcome.
Just a question in regards with that, and looking at the costs on that project and the sheet piling, additional sheet piling hire of $48,000, and that was under advice that we were told that it had to stay on longer by Horizons, but then they've advised us it could be removed.
Well,
so do we just wear that?
Well,
because it's a significant piece of money for someone just to make a decision. We think it needs to stay, but oh no, now it can be removed. Or am I being a bit?
No, it's
simple in simplistic terms.
Yeah, no, it's a great question and well spotted, to be honest. So what it was is an interpretation of the consent itself. We had a certain interpretation. Horizons had a different interpretation. There was a bit of negotiation around that, and we thought we got Horizons to a position where they agreed that they could be removed. But then on Friday, we received a written notification from them that it has to stay in. So we kind of back to the original position where they feel it forms part of the consent in the sense that it's there to create to control sediment runoff. We are saying that's not the case, and they should come out. So we are again negotiating with Horizons to get those removed, but at the moment they're still in place.
So there's actually still further ongoing costs for the hiring of that.
Yeah,
that figure that's in the report. Councillor Gordon.
So is Horizon still arguing that the sheet piling is a permanent fixture, or are they saying it has to remain there until the willows and everything else has grown sufficiently to do the same job?
Yeah, so what they're saying at the moment is the risk of removing it now is high because it's winter and we would expect high rainfall, and then there's a very high chance of whatever we replace in that space might get eroded away. What we're saying is the cost is enormous and it's just unaffordable. Plus, in our view, it is not part of the consent at all. And that's kind of where the disagreement lies.
So going right back to when this process started, were we expected to reinstate erosion control works on site that were already there, or was there nothing there?
Yeah. No, the consent actually explains that in quite a bit of detail as to the whole methodology of what we propose to do and how we're going to leave it. And that's kind of where it gets tricky. So that was what was approved. So it's all about interpretation. Really. The interpretation now is slightly different.
Okay. Councillor Dalgety.
I'm just interested around planting willows, whereas in lots of these areas, they seem to be hugely difficult to, we're cutting them out. Yeah.
So it's interesting, they want us to plant willows at the bottom end where there is a high risk of erosion, so in the flood line, and then above that, indigenous plants. And the reason is because the willows grow much quicker, and they'll stabilize that face that's going to be exposed to potential erosion. And then over time, we can replace those with indigenous trees. Yeah.
Just
Councillor Wilson.
a little bit of clarification. It may have been in the previous report, and forgive me if it was. So the tonnage that's been removed, I'm just looking at this excluding disposal costs. Now, when you say excluding disposal costs, what does that entail? So we've got a big pile of stuff, and I haven't been on the site. I wasn't able to attend the health and safety up there. So is there a big pile of stuff sitting there we've got yet to dispose of, or is there a bill that's already been disposed of which yet to come? And or
Yeah, so what happens is we took all the rubbish out of that site.
yes,
We screened it, then we tested the clean fill that's left over to show that there's no pollutants in that. And that can go back in that hole if we choose to do that. And the idea originally was that quite a lot of material will come out of that can only go to landfill. And that's the disposal cost. So some of that had to be carted off to landfill. In the beginning, there was a lot of uncertainty about what that would look like, the volumes and the cost involved. And I can't remember the exact numbers, but it was very, very little actually. At the end of it, the cubic meters that was removed to landfill was minimal. And most of that was just clean fill.
So that's not a reason to be alarmed that it excludes those disposal costs.
No, that's all done.
Right. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you.
Any questions?
The next one is the Marton Industrial Park and Rail Hub. Yeah, I don't know if the CEO wants to comment on this one. I'm a little bit further removed from this project than Peter is.
Do you want to give any comment that you could provide?
Not really. I was going to say, is there any additional comment to what's in the report? Things are progressing is probably the best way I could say it. There are items across the board that we need to we're working on. We're getting good advice from the advisory board and elected members that are part of that.
Thank you. Yeah, I think certainly still work in progress. So yeah, as things move forward, that will be updated through their report. Thank you.
All right, number 8 is the Marton Border Strategy, and obviously there's a report in this council meeting that we'll discuss in more detail. And the last one there is the Regional Treatment Plant Consenting Program, and that's just continuing as described in the report.
Right.
Miscellaneous, do you want to do that?
What have we got in there?
It's just two things on the Marton RSA and Citizens Memorial Hall. It's really for elected members and people who read this report to be familiar with is that council were under COVID funding. We were given $500,000 to upgrade the hall. In this current year's long-term plan, there's an additional $750,000 set aside for further improvements for that hall. And one is blurring into the other, is fair to say. As certain things happen, we had a leak in the roof which created issues, etc., and they're outlined there. And so there could be members of our community that don't see the separation between the two, but there is continuing work to address. When we started the work, we realised there was more than we really needed to do. For example, the heating was fairly poor and in many cases wasn't working appropriately. Part of the $500,000 from central government, we removed the heating, but we didn't have any budget to replace it. And now we've put that budget into a long-term plan to do some of the areas for heating. The final one in there is the Marton Swim Centre. And what's important there is that the swim centre and the gym will close. And we're doing our very best to make sure, we'll close for the duration of the, for the re-roofing of the swim centre. There's questions in there about asbestos, etc. But we're striving to get that done before the opening of, even before the preparation starts for the swimming pool in Marton. There's a risk there that gets pushed out by a couple of weeks as I think we've made the award for the tenderer.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Councillor Gordon.
Yeah, I've got a question. Actually, it's on the previous bullet point, item 9, about regional treatment plants. Down on the bottom in the risk area, we've got scope creep and cost and legislative changes. If we bundled all those together with the current Three Waters change that's happening, how much risk have we really got there, in your opinion? I mean, if we come up with some designs for these little plants around the district, are we at risk of then having a bigger agency come in and say, no, that's old hat, all out the window, this is the solution?
Yes, I think, yes, there would be, I would say, the potential for a different view on how this should be done, if there is a water entity in place.
Yeah.
The way we view this, though, because it is so sensitive and such an important cultural aspect, that we don't want to sit for another 2 years and wait.
I agree.
We would rather storm along as fast as we can. And what we feel is this will add extra priority to that when a water entity does take over. If that work is far progressed, it will continue. If there's not much, it might change completely. So for us, we view this as a really high priority and we want to continue as fast as we can.
Okay. No, thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? Councillor Duncan.
Just on that, just further that, my question would be, and if we do, as we do, progress this, this has been funded by debt?
That's a good question. I'm not sure.
Consenting program.
Yeah.
No.
No,
Find out at the break.
Councillor Way, but
Oh.
well, I can get back to you next week just to confirm. Yeah.
But it's just around the fact that if we are investing in this sort of thing and then Three Waters take over, then they then take over our debt.
I'm sure. Is it capex or opex?
It sounds to me like it might be debt, Dave.
If it was capital expenditure, it would become part of the works, I would presume, and then it would get, then it would get capitalised. But yeah, that's outside my pay grade. Sorry.
In mind, but that's one of the complexities of doing the consenting, because from Dave would know, or would analyse, I should say, because you're doing work on a potentially brand new asset, which we don't realise and never goes in our books. So we can't capitalise it on something that we don't own and that we don't depreciate. So it is a complexity that we don't currently know the answer to.
So that's actually a question at the 3 Waters workshop, because it's an important factor to take into
It has
account.
been discussed with without an answer.
Thank you. Just a question on the swim centre. So the swim centre is closing down over that winter period. Does that affect the act of the gym centre next to it? So they will continue. They don't have any concerns with asbestos.
I didn't present that piece very well, Mr. Chair. So the swim centre opens and closes regularly.
Yes.
Currently closed. scheduled to reopen in October, but it will open without doors being open, if that makes sense, in terms of its preparation prior to the official filling up the water, etc. The gym is open all the way along.
Right.
We need to re-roof the whole building. And so that during the re-roofing process, we will need to close the gym. And we are trying to make sure that the re-roofing of the swim centre occurs at the same time as naturally closed. There may be a crossover, and we're trying to minimise that through the PNI.
So the operators of the gym are well warned.
Right for now.
in regards with that. Yeah. Thank you.
Users of the gym haven't been told yet.
All right. Any further questions for the project update? If not, I'll have someone move that the project update be received from the table. Thank you, Councillor Duncan, seconded by Councillor Rolkawa. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Now we move on to the Marton, Rainfiki Beyond for 2050, but I'm just mindful of time because this will take a little bit of going through. So would council be happy to take an early break for our scheduled 2-hourly break, and then we'll return and get to the next item on the agenda. How does that sound? All right, happy to do that. Okay, so we'll take a stay from filming online. Thank you all for watching, and we'll just have a break, and we'll be back at 3:15. Okay, folks, we will reconvene council. Thank you for those online for your indulgence while we had a short break, and welcome back. So we're up to item 11 on the agenda, which is the first item on the reports for information is the Rangitikei Beyond 2050 project update, and I'll hand over to Ms. Gray to take us through. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So the purpose of this report is to provide you with an update of the Rangitikei Beyond 2050 project. It's my intention to bring you a project update on a monthly basis to ensure you're over what we're doing in terms of that project. I have developed a template report, so open to feedback on the effectiveness of that template and any suggestions for improvement. Effectively, I've just provided a short project overview that will remain constant in every report and set out the draft project schedule. Important to identify there is we've planned for community engagement early next year after doing significant background research and technical assessment this year, heading towards adoption of that document in August next year. In terms of the project updates, we've got our first advisory group meeting scheduled for August on the afternoon of the Te Raukawa Car meeting. So I'm very much looking forward to starting those meetings with the advisory group. This month has focused on meetings with key stakeholders and drafting of background research into some of our key issues, particularly focused on housing. Next month, or next 2 months, we're focused on doing further background research on a couple of issues. And important to note is I am intending on going to some of the community committee and board meetings to introduce the project and seek some feedback from them around key issues affecting the areas. So in August, I'm intending to go to Taihape, Ratna, Titakina and Hunterville, and intending to go to Marton and Bills in October. I'm happy to answer any questions that elected members might have.
Okay, thank you. Now, questions of the report. Happy to take any questions. Councillor Rolkawa.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Is it just the community boards and the community committees that you're going to be attending? No hapu things, or is that for the strategic?
So through you, Mr. Chair, I've got a report going to the Te Raukawa Car meeting in August. It's my intention after that meeting to send out an invitation to all hapu and iwi throughout the district to meet for that project. Yeah.
Thank you. Any further questions? Councillor Gordon.
Really one for Chief Exec and Arno. To what extent do we dovetail future asset need into a spatial planning space like this, where, because the sort of needs of assets, of physical assets, should be part of this discussion? Is that part of our, or was it Katrina I should be asking on this one, is this part of our game plan, Katrina?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, I'll be working with the assets team quite closely, particularly when we're looking at our future growth areas about what our asset requirements are and what we need. So we'll be working very closely together.
Thank you. Councillor Dalgety.
I'm just interested if an outcome of this plan is the possibility of being able to fast track that district plan review to an earlier than planned date based on need?
Through you, so this project forms the foundation of our district plan review and is intended to run subsequent to the development of the spatial plan. A lot of the background work that we need to inform a district plan review will be done through this process, but there is also a huge amount of work to do on the district plan review itself in terms of the detail of reviewing our objectives, policies and rules. So the intended date I have in my mind for when that district plan review would be publicly notified wouldn't be until kind of late 2023, given the amount of work we've got ahead.
There's a huge amount of information gathering, obviously going on, and to inform us of a clear and decided strategic plan. So that's the stage, obviously, that we're at the moment, is gathering all of that information together. So yeah, a lot of work involved, and yeah, I can understand your question, councillor, around the district plan change, and certainly around the lot sizes and things like that. I guess that's your point, where you're coming from. But yeah, all of that information goes into that decision and change-making process. Any further questions of the report? Being none, could I have someone move that the report be received? Thank you, Councillor Gordon. Seconded, Councillor Carter. All those in favour? Okay, carried. Thank you. Okay, moving on to the Marton water strategy, and Mr. Benedee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will take you through this report quickly. So in May 2021, at the council meeting, there was a resolution passed that we would change the raw water source to a groundwater source with a new water treatment plant to supply 5,000 cubic meters per day. And as part of that, there was a commitment to bring the finalised Marton water strategy back to council to review and to show you what we are planning on doing. Now, if you can remember, the strategy actually involved all of the water supply scheme, not just the source. And what I've done in the strategy, I've broken it up into those different pieces again, just to tie back to the original statement that we made. So the first portion of the work is the water source. And what I've done in the tables, we've clearly identified the actions and the timelines to show how this fits into the budgets that are allocated in the 10-year plan. And you can easily follow how the work will be completed to achieve the final outcome. So the first portion, the raw water source, the bit that we will be working on this year and spending the most of the time on would be to identify a position for another production bore. So we already have the Tutanui bore that supplies 3,500 cubic meters per day, but we would need an additional one to get to the 5,000. Also in the future, there's huge benefits of having the two, or maybe even somewhere in the future, even three bores. It becomes modular. We can add on. We can also in winter or summer choose to use one or both. We can repair one while we use the other one. So you can see how that really helps with redundancy and a couple of other things. So most of the effort will fall into that. For the water treatment, we will start looking at detailed designs. So we have a concept of treatment that will work. So we've already done that work, and we will progress with that as quickly as we can. And the idea really is to start with construction early in 2023 to allow us again to get this work done within the allotments and the LTP. So there's quite a bit of unfortunate paperwork that needs to happen all up front, and that takes quite long. So we just got to keep an eye on all these due dates. The third portion is water storage. So at the moment, we've got a new concrete water reservoir up at the site. And we will have a look at the capacity of that to be sure that once we produce 5,000 cubic meters per day, it is still sized adequately, or potentially somewhere in the future, we might have to add on to that to supply 5,000 cubic meters a day. So that's work we'll complete for that. And then the water supply network is the last portion. Work on this actually already started in some form. And what this really will touch on is how we deliver the water to the customers. And in what state is that? And where do we need to upgrade or replace or find leaks and repair those? So it's really looking at that whole supply network. If you think of efficiencies, if there, I don't know yet what the numbers will say, but if there is a large amount of water losses, that is quite an effective way to reduce costs. If we're producing 30% of water that does not reach the customer, that's an easy way to do things more efficiently. So this work, as I said, has started and will continue up to 2023. Right, and then recommendations, I think we've only got the one recommendation that the report be received.
Okay, thank you, Arno. Right, happy to take questions of the report.
Move the receipt.
You'll move the receipt, right. Move reception of the report. I think Councillor Dalgety, what were you seconding? Councillor Carter will second.
Yeah, question.
Okay, all those in favour?
Aye.
Carried, thank you. Right, questions. Councillor Wilson, then Councillor Carter, then Councillor Dalgety, Councillor Warden.
Thanks, Alice. So just with regards to the water treatment, and again, forgive me if this is something that's been covered off before. So we've got an existing bore that's down at the moment, which is producing 3,000 litres a day, but we need to put another bore. So are those bores going down to the same source?
Yes.
So therefore, we have got here that it says the most cost-effective treatment process applicable to the current groundwater sources ion exchange. Is that correct?
Yep.
So that would apply to both sources. Now it says most cost effective, but is that the most effective? There's two different things there.
That's a good question through you, Mr. Chairman. So what we did originally, we had a look at the cost of the treatment for the groundwater that we have, and the consultants came up with 4 different contenders. And actually there was a cheapest option of the 4 was a certain kind of treatment. We then went back to them and said, that's great, but what are the operating costs on these plants in materials and in chemicals? And then they did another run on that. We then had a look at an NPV, a net present value cost of a 20-year lifespan for those plants. And the ion exchange came up as the cheapest. So if you look at the capital cost to purchase and then the operating cost over the next 20 years, that's the winner.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for that. Yeah, that's important information to understand, so that anyone else in the public arena wanting to know what was involved in that, in the case around making that decision. Yeah, that's business case type modelling. So thank you. Right, next question is Councillor Carter.
You've got a board at the moment saying producing 3,500. Is the second board to produce 5,000 litres, or is it to add on to that first one?
If we go into the effort to produce another production bore, I would like to apply for the consent for as much as that aquifer can supply for that bore. So we do all the testing, the drawdowns and all the other bits before we submit the application for the consent. I think if we're going to spend the capital, let's get as much out of that capital spend as we can. So that's the direction I'll take on that.
Second question, is there another aquiflow that you can tap into?
As part of the report review that I've done earlier, there was a lot of work done on the aquifers around Marton and what's available. They went as far as actually using electromagnetic waves to identify where the aquifer is. And from what I can gather from those reports, it is actually the same aquifer. So there's this one, there's other ones that are much deeper, but it is the same aquifer. So for us, that's a good thing, because that means your source water quality stays the same, which means the treatment that we apply stays the same. So that's really good for us.
Thank you. Councillor Dalgety.
Two questions, please. So just thinking about the Hunterville bore, what is the risk of us going down and it not being suitable?
Yeah, thank you for the question. With bores, it is always like that. There's always that risk that you can get down there and you can't find what you're looking for. So what we do is we have a test bore first, which is generally a little bit smaller than the production bore, and it doesn't have all the final sheeting and all the rest of it that goes in there. So we do a test bore, which is probably about 30% of the total cost.
Okay.
And then we have a look at flows and water quality. And if it ticks all the boxes, we then progress to a production bore. And that's to kind of limit that risk.
Sorry, and as a bore only has a 20-year life.
The treatment plant.
The treatment plant only has a 20-year life.
Yeah, the bores are substantially longer.
Why is that? That doesn't seem very long to me.
Yeah, so especially the ion exchange treatment is in vessels. They're either made out of plastic and fiberglass compounds, which has a limited life. There's also quite a lot of pressure involved in those. So they generally, if you think of the pipe work, the vessels, the equipment on it, pumps, etc., they generally have a 20-year lifespan.
Thank you.
Councillor Gordon, you had a question?
Yeah, my one's around the network, water supply network in 2.5. I know if we find that that our main pipeline is the issue between Marton and the plant, so does that signal that we just replace the pipe and we diminish our need for extra water in the short term, or do we just, and does that mean that we just use your modular example of just adding on more bits of kit to increase volume as we need? Because I mean, you know, if we could solve part of the problem with pipe, then that's a big chunk of capital that's not required initially.
Yep, that is absolutely correct. I think what we'll do is once we start collecting the correct numbers to understand what happens. So it's interesting, there's the plant, and let's say 100 litres leave the plant. How many of those litres actually arrive in town? What happens in between? We can quickly figure that out. Once it's in town, we'll create these supply zones that are metered, and we'll do the same thing. We can kind of look at the whole network to understand how water moves around, where water is lost, and then we can build a business case as to how much money do we want to spend to go after that. And that'll go from the plant all the way to the customer, including what you said.
So that business case almost comes before we start actually doing too much capital spend. Yeah, okay, thank you.
Yep. In these things, there's a point, and the same goes for stormwater infiltration. There's a point where it's now costing you more to get it than what you're going to get back from finding it. And that's the time to say that's.
Councillor Ash, you still have a question?
Yes, I do.
Yes.
Thanks for the report. Yeah, that's good. I noticed there you've noted the reasons for the high usage from being, whether it be water leaks or inefficient use, water leaks on private properties. But one thing that I've brought up previously as well is also the culture of water use within Marton and within the district, that there's quite a not a huge respect for the water that's there. And one of the biggest cost efficiencies surely that we can make is if we're not having to actually process as much water. I mean, 5,000 litres per 5,000 cubes per day is huge. Absolutely massive for this amount. And even if you just came out with the percentage of 30%, even if we take that into account, that's still a huge amount of 400 to 500 litres per person per day for the town. So if there's any, is there any thing that we might be looking at to help address that sort of culture of water usage as well within the communities?
I think that's a really valuable idea. And when we get to a point where we understand the numbers better and we can understand with more certainty how much water is actually used by the customers, if that is really high, for us then to start with a bit of an education program to kind of help people think about water and how they use water, that is a very effective tool to bring that down. So we'll definitely do that.
Best education programs would be water meters and charging per litre. That's what it's achieved from best education system you could use. All right, Councillor Duncan, you had a question.
Thank you. I have on page, once again, 73, looking at your activities chart there. Can I just suggest that investigating current levels of leakage and loss being left to the end of June is a long way away, considering we've, Taihape went through water shortages this last summer. And I know that obviously it's been tricky because there's been a series of droughts, but we've actually got water problems again now for other reasons. But I'd like to suggest that that's actually really quite urgent. and I wonder if it couldn't be brought forward.
Yeah, thank you for that. The reason why that's end of June, if you look at the first one, it's actually connected to a much larger district-wide study of the exact same thing on all the networks. So although the Marton water strategy is specific to this network, we have to remember that we actually have a big district of a lot of these. And what we first of all want to find out is which of these networks are actually the worst and needs the most urgent attention. And potentially it's not this one, we don't know yet. But I think it's important to just keep that district-wide view of what we're doing to be sure we're spending time and money in the right place at the right time.
Thank you.
I know I just had a question in regards with that water treatment process and the current Tutanui bore, from our historical knowledge, has always been difficult water to treat, and some of the processes were around a lot of salt treatment process. Is that the current chosen way of dealing with this, the ion type system?
Yeah, absolutely. So it is an exchange of one ion for another one, and we use salt. Yeah, that's correct. It does have a bit of a reputation of being expensive. But if we look at the operating cost of that plant compared to what we're doing now, it is substantially cheaper than what we're doing at the moment. Also, there is potential for value adding at the back end. The water that comes off the ion exchange contains high levels of calcium, which is of value to a whole lot of different suppliers. So potentially we could look into adding value at the back end as well.
Okay. And the storage facility at Marton Treatment Plant, is there enough land space for an additional storage facility?
That's a really good question. I'm not sure. It's something we would have to look into. And you make a good point, because ultimately we would need to have a long-term view of what is it that we need and negotiate that with the farmer right up front to be sure we've got enough space to have what we need.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions of the report? Right, okay, we've got a mover and seconder to receive that. So thank you, Arno, for that update on the strategy, water strategy. Very informative, and look forward to things progressing. Okay, we're up to our late item now, which you should have all received both by email, and there should be a copy in front of you on the table. The submission to the inquiry on the natural and built environments bill. Yeah. Who will be taking us through this? Has everyone got a copy in front of them? Sorry. Now, on this document, there are other reasons why it is a late item, and as chair, I've accepted to agree to that. So the submission needs to be in front of the committee by the 4th of August, or received by the 4th of August. Is that right? Okay, I'm probably reading through the report. I'll let staff present and listen to the reasons. Right.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll provide a bit more context around this piece of work. As you're all aware, the government has indicated that they're wanting to revoke the Resource Management Act and go for a program of reform where they're going to replace the Resource Management Act with 3 different pieces of legislation. One of those pieces of legislation is the Natural and Built Environments Act. That seemed to be the main piece of legislation to replace the Resource Management Act. So what central government have done is they've released what they called an exposure draft on the proposed act and allowed time for comment effectively on that. So that's the topic of this submission. The Mayor has worked with WSP Opus to draft a submission on the Natural and Built Environment exposure draft, and that's what you've got in front of you. I won't go through point by point on what's been said. I'll take it that you've had a chance to read that as it was circulated prior, but happy to answer any questions.
Great, thank you very much. We'll start off with the first recommendation. So I'll move from the chair. The council agrees to accept the late item, and due to the reasons there in that recommendation, seconded by Councillor Wilson. All those in favour? Carried, thank you. And I'll now take questions of the submission, if there are any questions or comments from the table. Councillor Gordon first, and then Councillor Wilson.
I've got a question, and I guess it's for Katrina, and it's on the second page, second paragraph, and it's about, it starts, council is concerned that flexibility and local distinctions will be lost at a regional spatial scale. So does this exposure draft put emphasis on regional spatial planning as opposed to what TAs are going to do? Does it push the umbrella really high and really big, as opposed to looking at what we might do locally? Or is it the guidance documents that push everybody into a one-size-fits-all?
Yeah, I guess the concern is that one of the proposals is to establish regional planning committees, I think they're called them. And the comments that have been raised in the submissions are focused on, are those regional planning committees and doing planning at a regional scale going to be able to be agile enough and responsive enough to deal with local issues? And so that's kind of the theme of those kind of comments around being concerned about what might be lost if you're doing this type of work at a regional scale. The NBA itself, the Natural and Built Environments Act, isn't the piece of legislation focused on the development of the regional spatial plans, but it is intended that that would be developed regionally through these planning committees, and you would effectively have one plan per region. So at the moment, for example, we've got our own district plan, Manawatu's got their district plan, Wanganui got theirs, we've got the one plan for Horizons. All of those plans, there would just be one plan, including the likes of Horowhenua, Palmy. Everyone in our region would have one plan and one set of rules. Have I answered your question?
Yep, thank you.
I think in the submission, one of the last paragraphs in the conclusion around the want for having local authorities to actually have decision-making abilities. You know, the local people know what works in their space, and you know, one large plan doesn't always work for all right throughout the country, so you've still got to have that local input, and that's certainly been highlighted in the submission. Councillor Wilson and then Councillor Ash.
Partially already answered. My question was around engagement with iwi around this draft, but I think it goes to a next level after this, which I think is the question that I've just heard answered. So thank you for that.
Yeah, and for clarity as well, there will be a second public engagement process on the Natural and Built Environments Act.
My first question was just around the wording in the very beginning bit. The general council generally supports the need for change in order to protect and restore the natural environment. I don't feel comfortable with generally, because isn't that a priority that we'd actually committed to a couple of years ago, that we supported the natural environment? So I just don't like that word generally, but I do feel, and I know I will be completely outnumbered here, I think, but I do feel quite challenged with the wording around what the priorities are. To me, we have one environment and we do need to protect it, and sometimes there will be losses within the developmental space, I think, is what I'm trying to say. I just feel that we do need to get behind any legislation that is going to protect our environment and take that into account. I think when we're asking for, and I'm all for local voice to be the leading decider on all sorts of things, but I do think that there does need to be a collective mission of what we're trying to achieve for our environment, because that's what I see through what central government's trying to achieve here. That's what I read into it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and it's certainly in the submission, I think it's signalled that it is a balancing act. You know, there's certainly no doubt about wanting to protect the environment, but at all costs to halt development is the challenge. So there's this real fine line that needs to be worked out to allow for all parties to have input. So, and I guess this submission does cover that. The word council generally supports, you've got to read that whole statement rather than just the first few words, I think. So because it does talk also about the enabling development within environmental limits. So there are changes there that are, I guess, through the submission are agreed with, but some aren't. So we can't say we wholeheartedly agree with the process. But if you're strong about wanting the word generally removed, and you can coerce your fellow councillors to change it, that's what this decision here is today.
I actually would. I'd like to request and recommend that word generally is removed, because if you do read the entire sentence and read it without the generally in there, council supports the need for change in order to protect and restore the natural environment, enable development within environmental limits and outcomes, and give effect to TL Māori and improve system efficiency. That is what we support. Not generally, not none of this wishy-washy stuff. No, generally.
Councillor Gordon.
To actually try and clarify what Kath's driving at, if there was more detail on the second page around what the national planning framework has, because effectively they're saying there's going to be one, but we don't know what the detail is, would that actually remove Kath's issue? Because I mean, that was one of the big problems with the RMA, is that they said, well, here's the tool, but we're not going to give you the boundary limits around the tool. And so everybody went off and figured out their own boundaries, which didn't happen. It was pretty inefficient. So if the national planning framework is up to scratch, does that actually deal with what Kath's driving at? If it was say the protection of really valuable vegetable growing soils, then Pukekohe might not have been covered in houses. It might still be growing broccoli and cabbages or potatoes. You know, that's sort of what Kath is getting at, I think, isn't it? Because there's development and the locals said, oh no, we've got plenty of this stuff, let's just build houses. But actually, was that a good idea for the nation? Probably not. So
that framework is still to be developed.
Yeah.
So that's the challenge.
We don't know what we don't know at the moment.
Yeah.
Am I correct in supposition?
Okay, can you provide?
To provide a little bit of clarity, I guess what's happened recently under our current system is we're starting to get a lot of national guidance that we were missing for a number of years under the Resource Management Act as it was first enacted. What we're anticipating is that there will be more focus on that national guidance. So there's a whole section written into the exposure draft on this national planning framework, identifying that there must be one. And I guess we don't have the detail on exactly what that will be, but we can make some assumptions that it will likely incorporate at least the issues that are currently the subject of national policy statements or national environmental standards. So we do anticipate there'll be more national direction under that national planning framework. I guess what I'm hearing from Councillor Ash is whether Council's position should be that we support the protection of the natural environment above development interests, or compared to, say, a balancing type approach. I guess that's the debate I'm hearing as to where the natural environment sits in terms of hierarchy. If you have a look at the exposure draft, there are a huge list of outcomes that the new Natural and Built Environment Act is seeking to achieve, and some of them do conflict, and currently there's no guidance there around which ones will be prioritised, other than a bit of a sense that it's likely to be the natural environment through some other provisions. So I guess it's a bit of a philosophical question for elected members to consider what the position is.
Further comments, questions, Councillor Duncan?
Thank you. I agree with Councillor Ash that that does sound a bit wishy-washy, saying generally, and from what Ms Gray has just said, I wonder if another suggestion might be that we put in there council supports the need for balanced change.
Yeah, because you're considering two sides of the argument with that statement, and you're removing the wishy-washy type implication of generally. Yeah, I certainly agree with that. What's the general feeling around the table?
I think it's a step in the right direction for me.
I think for me, the focus is in the term Resource Management Act. This is how do we manage the resources that are available to us? When we think about the word natural environment, the natural environment is naturally destructive. I mean, we have flooding that if we did nothing about it would ruin areas of our district. So focusing on the generally is one small part of quite a huge legislation that we're going to have to, at some point, come to terms with. Human beings are both the problem and the solution. So if we put emphasis on protecting the environment at the expense of human beings, then we don't, we may lose the future person who comes up with the solution that solves all of these environmental issues. But when we talk about sustainability and natural environment, all that is only regards to us. The planet's been doing what it's doing for 4 billion years. So we've just come along in the last shower and we think our legislation somehow is important to what the natural environment is. But we want to maintain to a certain degree or to limit our impact on the planet. But in reality, our impact is negligible. In another 100 million years, we may not even see any evidence of human beings being here. So we've just got to look at the week that we're in and how do we manage that week. So, to me, what difference would it make to the body that's doing the legislation changes, whether we have generally in there or not? What's it really going to matter to their deliberations?
Councillor Dalgety, you had your hand raised before, and then I'll take Councillor Wilson.
Oh, I guess I'm just nervous that our growth is sort of laid off the taxi rank compared to some parts of New Zealand, Pukekohe particularly. So, I mean, I don't think our soils compare with Pukekohe's, and we're trying to once again take away the ability to localise some of these decisions based on problems that have happened in other districts. Yeah. So I'm nervous about that, what that could mean for us going forward when we desperately need housing.
Yeah, I'm quite happy with the word generally in there, based on the fact that on the competing interest section here, we just said that we fully supported it, and we were in direct contradiction to ourselves of what we're actually promoting and competing interests. So we need to have generally in there, because there will always be situations where it won't fit. So generally means that we are supportive of the direction, we're supportive of the need for change, and this is a submission. However, we need the scope to be in there to enable us to enact some of the things like the rail hub, which is under this competing interest section, which clearly says that if we didn't have it in there, we may not be able to actually do what we're looking to do now if this was already enacted. So I think generally there's a strong signal that we're supportive of the need for change, which is what we've all indicated. But I think in Councillor Ash's defence, there's not change at all costs. There's very generally supportive of change. So I'm happy with the wording as it is.
Councillor Duncan, did you have your opportunity to speak? I had your name down.
No, I've spoken, thank you.
Any further? Otherwise, I guess you've listened to some, oh, yes, Councillor Okawa's left engagement. Councillor Ash, coming back to you, and you'll want to remove that word. You've listened to the discussion. Are you still, after hearing the discussion, are you still wanting to perhaps?
I'd still like it to be removed if my fellow colleagues are of that mind, but if they're not, I totally accept and respect Councillor Wilson's take on that as well, and completely see that side of it as well. Don't know that I entirely agree with Councillor Parnika's take on our week here. I think we have a really, really important job here as kaitiaki of the land to ensure we don't diminish its ability to nurture other species other than ourselves while we're here. But please.
Okay. We'll bring this circle this conversation back around to try and wrap it up. But Councillor Gordon,
big picture process question really. This is the exposure draft that we're commenting on. So central government gets all our comments, and then they do what? Do we have another bite at the cherry later on? Yeah.
Yes. There'll be a second round of consultation. You'll also start to see the strategic planning act come out as well. Don't have the exact timeframes on the tip of my tongue today, but yes, you will see this again in a more detailed form, so in the bill form.
So once the nitty-gritty detail gets fleshed out on all the advisory tools that go with it, that's probably the time that we could deep dive a little bit further if we wanted to go there.
Yes, you will have another opportunity to look more in detail at the full bill. I think the indication we've had from the ministry is that given the significance of the piece of legislation, they're looking for comments early in the process, which is the exposure bill process. One thing to note is that this has kind of all come about as a result of the Randerson report that you might or might not be familiar with. And that report is quite lengthy, but does delve into a lot of detail around the need for reform, etc., etc. Not all of the suggestions in the Randerson report have been taken up, but a lot of them have. So if you are looking for detail in the short term, that report's a good place to get a sense of where the ministry are likely to head.
All right, thank you. I think wrap this up. After listening to the discussions and Councillor Wilson's point about not wanting to contradict ourselves, if we leave the word generally in there as it's been drafted, I think we stop ourselves, leaving ourselves open for any statements being thrown back at ourselves. So I'm happy to move from the chair, or is Councillor Wilson happy to move?
I'll move that.
You'll move that the council approves
Without amendment, the submission to the inquiry on the Natural and Built Environments Bill parliamentary paper. Do we have a seconder for that? Councillor Dalgety. All right. Any discussion?
Councillor Duncan.
Yes, I'm sorry, but I feel a little bit uncomfortable because that was a direct question from a councillor that she would like that, as I understood it, that she would like that asked of her colleagues. And I'm happy if that's proper process and it's all fine, but surely that councillor should be asked if she's happy with that decision before we go further.
I guess that's the vote on whether we accept it with amendment or without. So if it's if the vote around the table, if it accepts it with amendment, that's the democratic process.
And can I just also put in there, I'm not so invested in it that it matters one way or another.
That's what I need to know.
It's generally fine with it.
Okay. No further discussion. I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour?
Aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Right. Thank you very much. We are now up to receiving the minutes from committees as listed. So do I have someone prepared to move those minutes as a block?
Chair, I just have a question that's been asked at one of them from Councillor Raukawa in her absence. Would you like me to address that, or would you like to just go through them individually?
No, so the reasoning for us receiving them here is not to receive them as a true and accurate record. We are literally receiving the minutes. If there's some inaccuracies within those minutes.
No, it was a question that had come from one of them, which Councillor Raukawa had asked.
Okay. So it's not about inaccuracies?
No, it's certainly not about it. Actually, just
Okay, well, I'll take a question before we move.
It's said Councillor Raukawa in her absence has just noted that in the Youth Awards debrief from the Youth Committee minutes, the question has said councillors could be more supportive, and she was simply asking as to whether or not there's some way to ask the question back as to how we could be more supportive and what would the format be for that question to be asked and who would that would go to. It's just a comment that's in there, and she'd like to know how could we be more supportive there.
I can type it out.
No, you can answer it now, or?
No, I can't. No, sorry, I can't answer that now, but I'll follow it up.
Okay, so that could be an undertaking.
And I'd be happy if it was an undertaking. As I said, it's just been asked from Councillor Raukawa in her asking in her absence.
I suspect it's attendance.
Right.
Having spoken with Kelly this morning, it's increased attendance.
Okay. Well, that response then can be provided back to Councillor Raukawa by you, Councillor Wilson.
Happy to.
All right. Okay, so no further action required.
Happy to receive then as a block.
Okay. Reception of those minutes is moved by Councillor Wilson, seconded by Councillor Duncan. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Right, we now move on to public excluded to receive the minutes. We move into public excluded to receive these minutes? Exclude. Okay, could I have someone from the floor move that we...
One moment, we just need to load.
Okay, thank you all for your attendance online and enjoy the rest of your afternoon, evening. And Councillor Lambert, are you staying online? Great, thank you. There you go. Right, Councillor Lambert, can you hear us?
Yes, I can, but I can't see you.
Okay. What we're doing is we're moving into public excluded, and
Yeah.
we'll be receiving the minutes from the previous public excluded meeting.
Yeah.
So we will be disconnecting the live streaming.
Yeah. I mean, if it's a hassle, do you want me to leave the meeting if it's going to be a hassle?
So you won't be required.
Okay, well, thank you. No, that's right. No, good. All the best with the rest of the day. We'll catch up in the next time.